Moduls Rīga piedāvā.
How do you consider yourself? Who are you?
Yeah, well, who am I? I don't consider myself a poet in that sense. I consider myself an essayist and a translator of poetry. But what I'm trying to do in the essay is kind of explore new forms in the essay. So often what I consider to be essays, other people consider to be poetry. And it's a kind of distinction that doesn't really matter a lot to me. But what I try to do in the essay is take some of the discoveries of modernist poetry and apply that to the essay, because the essay has, particularly in English, has been sort of stuck in an 18th century form, which is a first-person narrative investigation. And the essay has never really had an avant-garde in English the way poetry and fiction have had. So what I'm trying to do is to explore new ways of writing essays. And the only rule that I have is I don't invent anything.
What's more important for you, the content or the subject of an essay or the form?
Well, they're kind of, you can't quite separate them at all. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the form and new ways of presenting information and things like that. Obviously, though, the content is, I want something that's of interest to read, so. And then I also write about politics too, and that's more a question of content than form.
How often do you think about yourself as an American? and is it important for you?
Never, actually. I think of myself as a New Yorker. I'm born in New York City. I've lived my entire life in New York City. And New York is really the world city. I mean, 50% of the inhabitants were born in another country. And most of the other 50%, including myself, are the children of people born in another country. So I feel more as a citizen of New York, which makes me a citizen of the world. And most of the things that happen in America don't really happen in New York. The Christian evangelicals, the guns, all of these kinds of things that one associates with the United States these days are not really present in New York. New York is really a kind of world city. I've been in opposition to most of the practices of the United States government most of my life, and so I'm not a patriot in that sense. I am not I don't believe that the American model of democracy is the model for the world.
Do you see some other model of democracy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're looking at the level of a nation-state societies, I mean, to my mind, the most perfect human societies are the ones that create the best possible life for an ordinary person. And at the level of the nation-state, it seems to me that the closest to this ideal is Western Europe after the war, the post-war period, in terms of what the life of an ordinary person was, in terms of long vacations, health benefits, excellent education, excellent mass transit, all of those kinds of things. I think Western Europe in the post-war period achieved this. And the United States, most people don't realize that the United States is, besides being the richest country, is also one of the poorest countries. and you have 25% of the children live in poverty in the United States, and you have tremendous poverty. The United States, if you look at those kind of World Bank listings of things like infant mortality and so forth, the United States is way below all of the industrial countries, and is closer to Malaysia in terms of those kinds of statistics. So I think that Western Europe created a kind of middle class society that's ideal in terms of the life, the normal life of an ordinary person. And the United States has become tremendously polarized in terms of rich and poor. The rich have gotten richer beyond anything that's happened in history. I mean, the great 19th century robber barons, so-called robber barons, were not nearly as rich as the billionaires, proportionally, as the billionaires today.
You have said you were a hippie in the 60s.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not one of those people that's, as many of my generation is continually nostalgic about the 1960s, so I'm not continually nostalgic about the 1960s. But I think that I'm a product of the counterculture. We rejected many of the predominant values of American culture of the 50s and 60s, and became interested in many other cultures. I mean, the counterculture was one that was embracing the ideas of many other cultures, and so and exploring alternate ways of looking at the world. And so I suppose I've continued to do that since. I mean, in terms of, I've spent much of my life traveling and interested in many other parts of the world and so forth. So I think there was a kind of openness about the counterculture of the 1960s, to which I'm still a part, in that sense. But I don't take drugs, and I don't, I mean, I'm not like an aging hippie, so it's not, I'm not living in a commune, I don't take drugs. There's political revolutions, and then you have revolutions in consciousness. And I think, and most youth movements tend to be revolutions of consciousness that sometimes are mistaken for political revolutions. And I think that it was I think that it did have a long-term effect in terms of breaking up a very rigid Protestant way of thinking in the United States. So out of the hippie movement comes feminist movement, comes gay rights movement, comes a greater tolerance for many different kinds of lifestyles, a greater openness to people of other ethnicities and so forth. So in that sense, I think that it obviously it did not change the American government, but I think it changed the way the society thinks in general. Bill Clinton always said that if you thought what happened in the 60s was good, then you're a Democrat, and if you think that it was terrible, then you're a Republican now. So.
We can see that many things have changed more rapidly during past 5 years than in last 30 years. I think the openness to tolerance to gay marriage question and legalizing marijuana and other things. Why it's happening now, and how do you see these processes in America?
Well, it's happened amazing. I mean, the gay marriage change has been astonishing how fast it has moved in America. I mean, 10 years ago, if you had asked me if would gay marriage ever happen in America? I would have been extremely skeptical. And I think that well, it's curious because one of the great forces of social change is television. And you know, in American television, suddenly all of the comedies and the really stupid programs all had gay characters on them. And suddenly people realized, oh yeah, my cousin is gay, he's okay, you know, and my neighbor is gay and he's all right. And it kind of created a normalcy about being gay. I mean, for the country, we're talking about for the country at large. So that attitudes changed extremely quickly. And you know, television is one of the great sources of social change in a completely inadvertent way. I mean, for example, you know, Brazil, which had one of the highest population rates, birth rates in the world, the birth rate suddenly plummeted when basically everyone could afford to have a television. And then on the television soap operas, they saw these families that just had 2 children and were living a really nice life with only 2 children. And this is, I mean, this has been proven. It's sort of amazing that then the birth rate started plummeting. Well, you know, we don't want 6 kids. We want 2 kids in a refrigerator, you know. And so it's amazing how television has been this amazing force for change, you know. And now, of course, you know, the internet is also yet another force.
So it was forced by Hollywood producers?
By what?
Hollywood?
Yeah. The same with when advertisements started having lots of black and Hispanic people in the ads and things, and so suddenly, you know, they create a kind of normalcy that then you know, people begin to accept. The other is no longer the other. You know, it's like there's a black person is now using the same laundry detergent as a white person, and so wait a minute, they're also humans, you know, that sort of thing.
Are you an optimist looking to the cultural processes in your country and in the world?
I'm well, of course it depends what issue, you know, we're talking about in terms of climate change and things like that. Obviously one has to be pessimistic these days because the governments of the world are not thinking about the future at all. And you know, obviously we're in a state of increasing environmental crisis. On certain things, I'm strangely I'm one of the only people I know in the United States that's optimistic about the United States, just because I think the demographic changes are enormous, and the country, basically, white people will become a minority in the United States, and that changes everything in the United States because a lot of the myths that the United States were based on will really no longer be applicable, or the new Americans are not adherents of those beliefs. So I think that's going to be very healthy and interesting. You know, the myth of the rugged individual, the myth of manifest destiny, that this is our destiny to, you know, to conquer, you know, to be the beacon of freedom in the world and so forth. A lot of these things are changing. So it's very difficult. For example, I think it's almost impossible to talk about Americans anymore. I mean, who are the Americans? You know, it's such a vast and such a diverse country that there's really nothing anymore that one can say is typically American, or is it typically American belief or custom or anything. So So I'm quite optimistic about that in that sense. You know, America is going to be, is increasingly more like New York City in terms of as a kind of mosaic of different ethnicities and peoples.